Well, today is National Aboriginal Veterans Day, and we're going to take some time and tell you about one Canadian hero. On October of 1941, nearly 2,000 soldiers from the Royal Rifles of Canada and the Winnipeg Grenadiers headed to Hong Kong. Now, they'd received only minimal training, and it was believed that they would see only non-combat duty. But in December of that year, the Japanese launched a series of unexpected attacks, Pearl Harbor among them. Japan also invaded Hong Kong, and in that battle that followed, some 290 Canadian soldiers were killed. Those who survived eventually became prisoners of war. One of those prisoners was Patricia Metallic, a Mi'gmaq from the Listuguj First Nation in Quebec. Now we're joined by Patrick's daughter, Patricia Metallic-Gray, is in Listuguj, and she's in the Mi'gmaq First Nation in Quebec. Thank you so much for joining us, Patricia. Tell us about your father.
Oh my God, we're going to need, I don't know, many days to talk about my father. My father was, I can't even describe him. He was a powerful man, stubborn, because he survived those POW days in Hong Kong. He came back. He came back as damaged goods. And there was nobody to take care of him. We didn't know, my mother didn't know, my grandmother didn't know. And he had terrible, terrible days. And for myself, I was very young, and I had long black hair. And when my father had those PST or whatever you call them, he thought I was one of the Japanese. So he would chase me around, but he never caught me. Thank God for that. And
go ahead, Patricia.
And he had good days and bad days. He came back. He had malaria. He was sick quite often. And way back on our rest, there was no doctors or anything like that to take care of him. So my poor mother had to take care of him. And we had some horrible time, him having those flashbacks.
So I understand you wanted some answers. You wanted to know more about what your father had been through, and you went to Hong Kong. What did you learn about what he went through?
They brought us to the battlefields, and of course the prisons are all gone. There's only little cement blocks left, and it was such a horrible story. The reason why I went there, I went to the National Memorial in Ottawa, and they were showing, first time I saw that, how they were dressed, what they ate, their shoes, and where they lived. I almost fainted when I saw that, because I hated my father for all the things he was doing to us, chasing us all over the place and people making fun of us. It was awful. And then when I went there, when I came back, I went down the graveyard and I apologized. I understood what happened to him, and it wasn't his fault. And I thought I had a terrible father. Well, he was terrible, but it wasn't his fault. I know I'm not the only one. There's a lot of children, their fathers were in prison camp. I know. And when I was there, there were 3 men from Listuguj that went to Hong Kong. One got killed. He just came out from the residential school. He was 17, and he got there and he got killed. And the other man and my father survived. So when I went to Hong Kong, I did a prayer for, his name was Paul Martin. Poor man never had a chance.
Sorry, I was just going to say that this is, I think, a little known part of Canadian history, that as many as 12,000 First Nations fought in Canada's military engagements over the years. What would you like Canadians to know about the contribution of First Nation soldiers in the war?
It should be taught in schools. Because myself, I did a little thing. I have 2 daughters that are teachers in school, and they're like, right now, they're having a little ceremony for all the veterans that went to war from Listuguj. Because there was a lot. Not the Second World War, but the Vietnam War and the Korean War. We have lots of soldiers. I have a great respect for anybody that joined in the forces. And I have great respect for their children, their wives, their mothers and fathers, for all the things they saw that their kids weren't not like that when they left. My father never drank or smoked. He was always into sports, and he came back as a broken man.
What would your message be to the children of other veterans, not just from the Second World War, but of course we have been involved in Korea and Afghanistan, the children of veterans who may have the same lack of understanding at this point that you have gained? What would you say to them?
Oh my gosh. Like when I was growing up, there was nothing. Nowadays, there is so much things that you can learn, and there's people to talk to. When I was young, there was nobody. It was just my grandmother and my poor grandmother. All she said was pray for him. Yeah. Now, there's so many things that, and there's so many books. There is so many things that you can learn from it. And I know those children are suffering because your parent is not the same like when he left. I was young when my father left, but I remember the day he came home. It was in October. I just came from church with his mother. We were walking down the street, and there was a soldier coming because I've never seen my father. He left when I was very young. And when I saw him, I think I was about 7 years old. And there was this soldier walking on the street, and my grandmother started screaming and running. That's where I met my dad. Yeah, it's not a nice story, but you survive.
If you could say something to your dad, what would you want him to know?
Oh my God. I don't think my father knew that. My father knew I was afraid of him. And I know he taught me to be honest, never be scared to say the truth. And let me tell you, it got me in trouble sometimes because I'm very outspoken. It's his fault, but I'm glad he was strict. And he made us, like before I went to school, all the beds had to be made and the floors had to be swept and stuff like that. He was law and order in the house, and I'm glad for that. And I will respect him till the day I die.
Well, I want to thank you for having the courage to speak out and tell his story, Patricia. We really appreciate it. And on this day, on Aboriginal Veterans Day, it's wonderful to hear that piece of Canadian history. You've told it so well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
At the Listuguj Mi'gmaq First Nation in Quebec, Patricia Metallic's daughter, Patricia Metallic-Gray.